Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Nantucket Airport Commission for April 10th, 2018 to order, please. Couple of announcements. This meeting's being both audio and video recorded. And Mr. Drake is participating remotely as his physical attendance is unreasonably difficult. As such, all votes tonight will be taken by roll call. And with that, we'll move on to the agenda. Are there any comments or concerns with the agenda as drafted? Hearing not, we'll consider that adopted, move forward. We have the minutes of March 16th, 2018. Are there any comments or concerns with those minutes as drafted? Hearing none, we'll consider those adopted. We have to ratify the warrants of March 21st and April 4th. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And a second. Is there any discussion on the warrants? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call to ratify both warrants. Commissioner Buscarin?
Aye.
Commissioner Topham?
Hoffman? Approved, yes.
Commissioner Planzer?
Aye.
Commissioner Drake?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. We're going to move on to a public hearing to consider proposed revisions to the airport's rates and charges. We had reviewed initial draft at our last meeting, and this is a public hearing. I have a brief statement I'd like to go over for this public hearing, and then we will open it up. This is to public hearing to hear comments and proposed changes to the airport's schedule of rates and charges. The rates and charges incorporate fees for all airport services, aeronautical and non-aeronautical, utilized by operators and other tenants. The objectives of the rates and charges schedule are to make clear to any user the charges applicable to the services utilized and to comply with the airport's statutory duty, to maintain its financial sustainability, to ensure its rates and charges are fair and reasonable in the context of time, place, and services rendered, and to ensure that a relatively disproportionate share of revenue generation is not placed on any particular user group. The proposed rates and charges before you today incorporates the following: revised fees for Part 135 operators providing scheduled service, eliminating the FBO user fee, updated parking rates and parking violation fees, new aeronautical charges. Some are listed as to be determined, which you'll notice on the revised draft is will happen through a rates and charges study that we're about to undertake, and those to be determined charges would be adopted at a future public hearing process. And also a new derelict aircraft storage fee. We also have changed the format of the way that the rates and charges are listed, which we hope that all will find to be more user-friendly as well. Copies of the proposed changes are available at the back of the room. Members of the audience will be given an opportunity to speak to their specific concerns. The commission will first take comments on the aeronautical charges, pages 1 to 9, and then on the non-aeronautical charges, pages 10 to 14. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak, and I will recognize you. Please come to the microphone and identify yourself, as well as any relevant business affiliation before making your comments. And we'd appreciate if you could keep the comments as brief as possible. At the conclusion of your comments, we'll ask the commission to comment as well as if they have any questions of the speaker. And we will then close the public hearing and deliberate and take such action as we deem appropriate. And we certainly thank all for their interest and participation. And with that, I will open the public hearing on the rates and charges. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Seeing not, I think we'll turn it over to the commission. Why don't I turn it over to Manager Rafter in case you had anything that he would like to add?
I'd just like to point out in your packet, there are, I believe, comments from two different airlines, Tradewinds and Reliant. And Mr. Carberg has met with Reliant this morning, and I believe, have we updated the version to address the comment made by Tradewinds for the Pilatus? There was a recommendation, my understanding is the Pilatus aircraft, there's different versions, and some of them are just over 10,000 pounds and some are just under 10,000 pounds. So there's a recommendation to either just make the Pilatus all one price or raise the rate, the weight limit to 12,500, which is a design category for aircraft. So have we made a recommendation either way for that? No,
Noah Carberg, Assistant Airport Manager. Following up on Tom's comments and Mr. Zipkin's comments from Tradewinds, the request from Tradewinds was if we would consider on page 5 of the rates and charges draft, bullet 3, FBO users scheduled service. Item D, ramp fee. There are 2 lines highlighted in green. Mr. Zipkin's suggestion was 10,500 pounds, which would cover both the newer and older models of a Pilatus PC-12. 12,500 is also a valuable or a justifiable category. My own recommendation would be the 10.5. The further you move that weight class up, the more aircraft you are moving down in a ramp fee category. It's a small revenue hit that I think we could manage, but if there's not any comment for the 12.5 class, I would suggest a change from that cap from 6,000 pounds, replacing the 9,999 pounds with 10,500. Sorry, I hope I made that clear in the end.
I thought that was quite clear. And then the next category up from 10,000 to 10,500 to 24,999.
Correct.
Are there any questions on
Yeah,
that proposed revision?
On the, about how many planes or type aircraft are in the, let's see, it'd be 10,500 to 24,900 or, I mean, are there a lot of aircraft in that category?
I just wrote this up in an email for a different airline company. I can't remember it all, but there are a number of light business aircraft that do make up a good portion of about 24% of our ramp fee burden, that I would call it. So there are the Citation Mustang, I think the 525 Citation, and maybe both the CJ1 and CJ2 could be affected by that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Drake, did you have a comment?
No, I think the suggestion to make it, I guess the limit would be 10,499 pounds on the lower category.
To be consistent with the other.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Is it, yeah, okay. 10,499 pounds, up to 10,499 pounds, and then over 10,500 pounds. Or 10,500 pounds and over.
Up to 24,999.
Consistent with the other ones.
Is there a consensus on that revision?
Yes.
I can't find it, but it's okay.
Unfortunately,
you.
the page numbers were cut off.
That's 10,000.
It's under bullet 3.
Oh, they changed
Yeah.
it. Oh, thank you. All right, thank you very much.
And again, we are, this is a bit of an interim change as well, given that we are just undertaking the study for the rates and charges, but hopefully we'll help clean everything up, I think, for the season. Manager Rafter, did you have anything further on the
No,
rates and
just
charges?
A comment on the overall rates and charges model and methodology development. That is due to be completed by June 1.
Are there any further
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, may I suggest you close the public hearing, and then I will make a motion to approve the revised rates and charges.
So hearing no further comment, we will close the public hearing. And anything further from the commission on the rates and charges?
No.
Hearing none, Mr. Drake, would you like to make that motion?
I would.
And is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion to adopt the rates and charges with the revision just discussed. We'll do a roll call. Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Drake?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Thank you. Moving on. Is there any public comment for items not otherwise listed on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to the pending leases and contracts as set forth on Exhibit 1, which y'all have a handout in front of you. Mr. Rafter, would you like to?
Just to
Briefly.
confirm, it's updated 4/10/18. I want to make sure everybody has the right version. It was handed out. I believe there's copies in the back. There were some last-minute changes, primarily based on a grant that we received this morning. The first is a lease amendment with the TSA, General Services Administration, for their rent. Annual lease, it's $51,775, 3-year renewal option, taking it through May 31st of '21, with annual CPI increases. The next, I'm going to ask the Commission's indulgence on a contract with Highway Safety Systems. We don't have all of the paperwork in place yet, but I would like to ask for your permission to approve it subject to receipt of that paperwork, because this is a critical item that's needed for our FAA inspection that will take place before the next meeting, or this work needs to take place before then. It's for removal and replacement of airfield pavement markings, so it's removing build-up paint and replacing that, and it's for $120,290. It went out to bid. It came in about $20,000 or $30,000 below the estimated bid cost. So I would ask the Commission's approval subject to the appropriate documentation. Next is a contract with Hortonville Consulting, and that is for the update or the redo of our full-scale exercise, which is taking place Thursday. As you recall, back in September, we attempted to have our full-scale exercise. Instead, we elected to have a real event. So this is just a minor change to the contract to provide that update. Next is a contract with Jacobs Engineering for task order number 2 under professional services for $30,000. It's a design of the fence work and the associated pad and conduit work for the generator that's associated with the electrical vault resolution. It is 100% ASMP grant from Mass DOT. Next is a contract amendment with Airport Media Solutions for $1,100. It's our advertising consultant to cover costs for travel, and that I can tell you that they're already negotiating contracts that are more than double that in return to us, so that's positive. Contract amendment with Lakes Region for $1,000. They're the folks that inspect our fuel farm, and there's some parts that are needed that they have to replace, so that's to cover that. And then we have a contract with South Shore Generator for repairs to the generator at our fire station for $16,861. It may be an insurance reimbursement that was damage that was caused during the one of the storms. And then a contract with Anise Electrical Services for $109,500 for the electrical portion of the seasonal hold room work. And I will get into the details on the seasonal hold room later in the meeting, but this was a bid that was put out, and they were the apparent low bidder.
Are there any questions from any commissioners on any of the?
What kind of electrical work is Anise doing?
The hold room extension, they structured awning. They're bringing the feeds up from the basement out to that, putting in lighting, putting in the necessary cabling for the airline systems that they need, as well as, so it's electric, data, and I believe phone.
And I presume that would be set up for seasonal connect and disconnect?
Yes, that's correct.
And the microphone will be working that the end used to call you and announce you,
The-
nice and strong?
The new PA system, and I'm going to report this later,
Okay.
is to be up and operational by mid-May. And there are 2 exterior horns that will cover that new hold room area.
Thank you.
Anything further on the leases, contracts, and agreements? I'd entertain a motion to approve as listed, and I think the motion should probably also have language to specifically address the highway safety systems as explained by Manager Rafter.
Make a motion to approve those contracts.
I'll second.
With the provision that the highway safety systems is subject to receiving the appropriate paperwork.
Yes, agreed.
Thank you. Any further comment? A roll call. Mr. Viscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Drake?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Moving on to pending matters. General fund repayment proposal, discussion of in-kind services. Mr. Rafter?
On that subject, I spoke with the town finance director. He is working with town council on drafting an appeal letter to the FAA, and that has not yet been submitted, but they're expecting to do that in the near future. The Brookfield assets sublease to FedEx, we're still working through. There was some confusion as to whether we required certain information or the tenant did, and we're not quite sure where this document surfaced to, so we're reviewing that and verifying it. And on the crew quarters development, we did receive at the annual town meeting last week the necessary change for zoning to allow for us to construct the proper, or the what we're proposing for development of the duplex situation there on that property.
Any questions on any of the pending matters? Here not, we'll move on to item 7, the declaration of surplus property.
This is labeled as 10 Sun Island Road, and it is declaration of surplus property that will allow us to reissue the RFP for the Sun Island Road parcels. It's a requirement under our procurement laws. Do we need a vote on that, Janine?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you all have that in your packet for number 10 Sun Island Road, as previously discussed. And on the back side of that is the sketch of the parcel. Any discussion or questions on the declaration? Hearing none, we'll entertain a roll call vote. Mr. Viscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Drake?
Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you. Next item, number 8, is the commission policy on non-aeronautical land lease appraisal and fair market value cap increases. Perhaps I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting when we were discussing the agenda. I would like to suggest that this is moved to executive session as an item not reasonably anticipated by the chair within 48 hours. So that we could spend a little more time and try to perfect this before we adopt a policy, if that's amenable to all commissioners.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Hearing no further comment on that, consider that done by consensus. And I'll turn over to Mr. Rafter for the third quarter financial year 18 update.
I wanted to provide this to the commission. It's currently in draft form, but Jamie has reviewed it and believes it's very close to what will be presented to the Board of Selectmen, and I'm not sure exactly when we're presenting that, so I wanted the commission to see it first, at least in draft format, for our third quarter update. And in summary, we're still ahead of the game, but we're not quite as good as last year. The revenues are up about $449,000, predominantly because of the fuel revenues that were put in there. But there's also a significant increase in expenses associated with the purchase of that fuel. So our expenses are up by about $531,000 for a net decrease of about $82,000 before debt service. After debt service, we're still at a positive $1.6 million, but it's about $70,000 below where we were last year. So Jamie has done a look at the future, and she believes we're not going to have any problems certainly getting through the rest of the year, and we should still have some decent retained earnings as well.
Are there any questions or comments on the third quarter update?
If I may, too,
Yes.
just a couple of other comments. What we're seeing here is we're shifting our reliance on retained earnings to other funds that we have and putting the money from the fuel revolver into certain things, from the PFC fund into other things. And so we're seeing a decrease in reliance on retained earnings, but we're still building our retained earnings. So that's a good thing. We're still progressing towards our goal of being financially self-sufficient without relying on the fuel, but we're still not there. We have a way to go.
I had one question, which is maybe a little open-ended, but how big of a category is other?
It depends on what takes place. If it doesn't fit into a particular line item, it could be sometimes it could be a one-off type thing, whether it's an insurance proceed or something of that nature, or insurance claims. I would have to ask Jamie for the details on each, and we can do that.
And is that generally sort of captured in that to keep the third quarter update as a synopsis, and then when we actually look at the full budget, that's broken down further, I presume?
Yes, and it's also to keep in line the some level of fiscal discipline, maintaining those other accounts so that we're not just throwing things in where they don't necessarily belong.
Thank you. Anything further on the third quarter update? Mr. Drake?
No, all set, thank you.
Yep. Okay, moving on to the grant awards.
We were
You wanna-
fortunate enough to receive them. One we just received this morning. Did you want to take that?
No, why don't you run through that if you would, please?
So again, as you know, we're very fortunate that the state has a very robust program of airport safety maintenance program funding items. And I apologize, I don't have on mine. We have 4 grants. The one is for the fencing in the area of the vault. The one we just talked about, that's for $70,000. The second is a seasonal hold room, which is a partial, and that is the structured awning that we're talking about. That's for $142,500. The rates and charges analysis methodology establishment, an update is $80,000, and a security vehicle for $24,078. So all in, it's several $100,000 that the state is providing to us for these projects, and it's a great program, but we need to accept and adopt the grant assurances as well, and then they'll be sent to the Board of Selectmen for their approval.
Are there any questions or comments on the 4 grant awards?
No.
Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the grant awards and adopt the associated grant assurances.
I'll make that motion.
Is there
Second.
a roll call vote? Mr. Biscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Topper? Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Drake?
Aye,
I also vote aye. Manager Rafter, the floor is yours for your report.
On the project side of the house, the vault replacement, as I mentioned earlier, or previously, we've issued a purchase order to National Grid, so the resolution for the overall vault is moving forward. We also received 2 bids for the generator portion of the project, and they're under review. On the PA system / flight information display project, Infax and Ryder Electric have been working to install the PA, the speakers, and the various components of the system. And we're being told that by mid-May, we'll have a fully functional new PA system in the terminal building. We're continuing to seek other alternative funding sources for that as well. The ramp area 3, if the weather ever breaks and gets a little warmer, the contractor will be back out to do the seal coating. They're hoping to do that in the next couple of weeks. Geometry issue, we received 2 deliverables. The first was a memo identifying and clarifying the issue as well as the standards that are to be met. And just today, this afternoon, we received approximately 7 alternatives to be reviewed. We're going to try to narrow them down to about 4, and we want to bring in the local air traffic control tower chief for his input on that as well. The restaurant vestibule is under construction. They're hoping to be complete by, I would say, the first or second week in May. They ran into a couple of unknown issues once they dug up the earth there. There were some concrete encased conduits and some other things, but they did get an inspection yesterday from the building department, and that's been approved and moving forward. On the restaurant itself, they're in the process of moving back. We met with them the other day, and they're not anticipating making the May 1st deadline, but by mid-May, they'd like to be up and operational. There's a number of pieces to what we're labeling the additional capacity program that NOAA has done a yeoman's job on hounding that down and keeping it on track. As I mentioned before, it's a lot of behind-the-scenes things that you don't see. It's relocation of the inserts for the ticket counters for the airlines, expansion of the counters for JetBlue, moving the back wall signs. All the podiums in the hold room had to be redone, expanded, reallocated, and all cabling from the basement up completely rewired. So it's moving along. There are some action items that NOAA has identified for each party, the airlines and ourselves as well, and that should be on track for up and operational for the season. The fuel farm lights have been installed and are operational, working very well. We're also working on a project at the Great Harbor Yacht Club. For those of you who may recall, years ago there was a pipeline there, and when I first got here, we were asked to remove the pipe. The pipe has been removed, the stanchions are still there, but we're working through the process and trying to identify exactly what needs to be done with permitting. We have an estimate, but it's probably going to require a future capital investment of about $30,000 to $40,000. So we're in the process of investigating what exactly can be done, whether it can be done in phases, and what permitting needs to be done. On the RFP bid updates, on Bunker Road, we received 2 proposals at the appraised rate of $2.10 per square foot, and one of them requested 16,000 square feet, the other requested 10,890. We've reviewed those, and we're anticipating that we'll be recommending them for award at the next meeting. We also received the proposal for the utility site for $2.20 a square foot, which is approximately 13,000 square feet. So we will have, as you did before you awarded a prior Bunker Road lease, so there'll be 4 new leases on Bunker Road at or above the appraised value. The Hangar 5 RFP has been issued. It's for a lease and rehabilitation of the hangar. The bids are due May 4th, and there is a walkthrough scheduled for next Friday, not this Friday. The flat roof old FBO building, we issued the request for expression of interest. The expression of interests are due April 18th, and we have a walkthrough tomorrow scheduled with that, and we have a number of people who have expressed some interest in the building. We're continuing negotiations with Airport Gas. The bid for markings and paint removal we awarded earlier, as I mentioned, that came in about 20 or 30,000 below the estimated bid cost. And generator, as I mentioned, we received 2 bids are being reviewed. And Sun Island Road, now that we've issued declaration of surplus property, we'll be reissuing that RFP. On the operation side of the house, a reminder that our full-scale exercise is this Thursday, April 12th. It'll be kicking off at about 9 o'clock. It will be a low-keyed exercise. We're not going to be running ambulances between the airport and the hospital. We're going to simulate that, working closely with the fire department on keeping it low-key, but meeting all of our requirements for FAA. As I mentioned earlier, we actually had the real thing during our scheduled event before. We are looking at the possibility of a mini airport day in conjunction with the reopening of the restaurant, where we would bring over some equipment that we could invite the public out. We're going to see if we can get a couple airplanes and, allow the kids to see some of our fire trucks, some of our snow removal equipment, and coordinate that with the restaurant reopening to try to get some people out here. Also publish we'd have a fly-in type weekend where we would waive some of the fees for the smaller aircraft, private airplanes, and try to generate some activity there. We had a meeting with the Island Shuttle representatives and their affiliates last Thursday. They're still hoping to begin possibly by May. They need to perform their final step in the approval of FAA, and that's their proving run. Once they do that, they can then expand their service. They're going to do their proving run between New Bedford and Nantucket. And then once that's accomplished and approved, they can then the next day begin Hyannis service. They are looking at a fairly decent frequency and have indicated that their pricing will be competitive with the boat. So that's very good news. We're anxious to work with them and told them anything they need to let us know. UPS has requested an extension or expansion of their existing space. We've identified through our engineers what that can include, and we'll be working on documents with them to make those necessary arrangements. And as I mentioned earlier, our advertising consultant is on island today, working with Katie to do some sales calls, update our program, and make necessary changes, and we've already seen some decent financial results from that. Any questions before I move on to statistics? That was a hard one to say, statistics. Okay. Unfortunately, operations continue to decline. They're down 42.46 for the month and 13.6 for the year. The general aviation operations are up 29% over last year for March. Enplanements are down 5.12 over last February and down 2.9 for the year. But again, I think we're starting to see a leveling off of that. Cape Air saw a 4% decrease, while Nantucket Air had an 18% decrease. Tradewinds was down 13%, and Retrix had an increase of 14% over last February. Cape Air experienced a 24% decrease in the Boston market. New Bedford traffic continued to increase with a 147% increase, or 154 passengers, so that's positive. The Hyannis market saw a decrease of 5%, or 59 passengers, with Cape Air increasing from 11 to 33 passengers, Nantucket Air decreasing by 18%, or 142 passengers, and Retrix increasing by 61 passengers for a 14% increase. Vineyard traffic is up significantly, only 41 passengers, but 87%. And on the jet fuel side of the house, Jet A gallons sold for February are up 18.8% and up 6.55 for the year. And for March, they're up 38.55. Now that, again, this time of year, it sounds like, it's a big percentage, and it may not be a lot of gallons, but that is still significant for March. That's pretty awesome. Avgas is up 6.88 for February, and year-to-date down 17.15, and March it's up 28.5 roughly. February freight was down 3.73 over last February, and up year-to-date 6.1, with, again, Cape Air saw a significant increase there, and UPS is still climbing slightly. So the freight market is seeing some changes. In our meeting with the Island Shuttle folks, under their umbrella will be Allies Freight as well, and they're hoping to start around the same time. They're putting in alignment with their aircraft and personnel, so hopefully we'll see some freight changes. Noise, no complaints again this March or February, same as last year, which is that time of year, and it's a good thing. And on the personnel side of the house, any questions on statistics before I move on? Personnel, we are beginning to process seasonal employees. We're in a pretty good shape this year. We have a lot of return employees. Some of the contingent that we have from Puerto Rico is coming back, which are great because they stay beyond the what I'll call the college season. We lose a lot of college staff, seasonal staff, August 15th. The contingent from Puerto Rico will stay through October. Our staff did attend a job fair at the high school on March 29th, and we have some leads from that for some seasonal employees as well. And we have a replacement for Mr. Tallman. As I may have mentioned, Bob Tallman has announced his retirement. He'll be retiring May 4th, and he's put in 15 years of tremendous service at the airport. He's going to be a lot of big shoes to fill there. We're going to miss Bob. But we have announced a replacement. Her name is Brittany Caselli. She came in today to begin the paperwork process with the HR department downtown and will be shadowing Bob for several days throughout this month and then officially taking the position over in May after Bob's retirement. Also, Gary Allen has accepted the position of Building and Technical Systems Specialist, which was made available when Mr. Dugan resigned. So we now have an opening in our maintenance department too. So if anyone knows anyone that's interested, we do have an opening in maintenance. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions on anything covered by Manager Rafter? Hearing not, we'll open it up to commissioners' comments. Any comments? Mr. Drake?
I was just going to want to say that I think the airport staff and manager did a tremendous job in following up on the opportunity for the grants from the state, for the supplemental grants from the state and the Commonwealth. And I want to commend them for that. It was found money for the airport.
Thank you, I agree.
Thank you, Janine and Katie. And no.
Anything further? Hearing not, any public comment? Nothing from the public. With that, I would entertain a motion to enter executive session per General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for possible release, and one for review and possible release. Also to discuss strategy with pending litigation in respect to the AIP projects, which we've determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the Airport Commission, as well as the matter which was unanticipated within 48 hours, which is to discuss the commission policy on non-aeronautical lease land appraisal and fair market value cap increases, which may, in open session, have a detrimental effect on the position of the Airport Commission. Not to return to open session. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Biscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Vote aye as well. Thank you, everybody.
Good.
Dan?
Good day.
I as well.
I'm sorry.